It's a great honor to be here tonight and ask the questions that I didn't feel were adequately answered back in June. I was talking about the increase in the amount Canadians were spending on food, out of their weekly budgets. It was about $800 a year more being spent on food at that point in time. But since then, you can take a look at what's happened to the cost of food. The latest information on food inflation is up over 3.4% year over year. Now, I'm going to cherry pick, acknowledge I'm cherry picking some stats here, but people will know what I'm talking about here when I tell them the ground beef is up 15.3% year over year. Bacon is up 13%. Canned salmon's up 11.6%. Oranges are up 11.6%. Fruit juices are up 11.5%. Nuts and seeds are up 14.2%. And coffee, that ever-sustaining fluid, is up 27.9%. So this is significant inflation built into, I hope, what our basket of goods that my colleagues on the other side will recognize are the part of daily life for so many Canadians. Now, I try to bring this together as far as what's happening in the economy. Things are costing more for Canadians. And this is a result of economic policies brought about by this government, particularly overspending. Now, the government plans to spend in their initial budgets or initial estimates from last year 8% more this year than last year. They're going to have to print more money. More money's not coming in. More money's going out the door. And since then, of course, we've delayed and delayed and delayed the budget. So now we're actually going to see how much more this government is going to spend, but it's going to be a lot more than an 8% increase over last year. Let's put it over a $100 billion deficit coming out of this year, which is almost more than a double from what the deficit was expected to be, and the deficit was last year, which of course means more interest payments, which of course means more inflation. All of these things roll through the economy, and they are felt by Canadians. Now, the inflation is felt in basics like food, basics like shelter. So Canadians are bearing the brunt of bad economic policies that this government continues to go down the road on. There is a price to pay for overspending, and that price, of course, is out of the pockets of Canadians themselves. The hidden costs of these deficits are $50 billion plus last year. Think about when the interest rates actually go up at some point in time here in the near future. That cost to Canadians is going to be significant. But look at the money leaving Canada. The money leaving Canada is an indication of how bad your economy is actually doing. Now, just a quick number here. Back in 2014, the net difference between the money invested in Canada by foreigners and the money invested by Canadians elsewhere was about $100 billion in deficit. That is $100 billion more of Canadian investments going outside the country versus what's being invested in Canada. Now that number is ballooned to $971 billion as of the end of 2024. That is $971 billion more invested outside Canada than being invested in Canada. Canadian money is leaving this economy for good reason. Bad economic policies comparative to almost anywhere else in the world where it can invest. Our Canadian dollar is going down, but another touch point. Since this government came in, $86 billion more has left the country on a net basis this year alone. We're not doing the right policies. We've got to change direction here, Mr. Speaker. I'd love to hear the government actually say they're going to address the problem, but right now all I see is a Prime Minister and a government that wants to continue to spend money and continue to visit economic pain upon Canadians. Will they please indicate how they're going to turn this around?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the intervention for the Honourable Member for Calgary Centre and his concern on some of these matters. And I'm happy to respond with some of the actions our government is taking to stabilise food prices and help Canadians with the cost of living. You know, Mr. Speaker, we recognize that food affordability continues to be a critical issue that all Canadians are faced with. And, you know, the Honourable Member across cited some statistics and some trends. You know, we know that food inflation was a global phenomenon during and after the pandemic. But happily, price increases have slowed considerably. Food inflation for groceries has fallen from a peak of 11.4% in January 2023 to under 3.5%, as the Honourable Member cited in August 2025. The Honourable Member talked about good economic policies, and he talked about spending. And actually, we agree that the government does have an important role with good economic policies to help address some of these challenges. And that has to do with promoting competition, primarily in the portfolio that I assist the Minister of Industry with, and also some related policies to help those who are most in need. So first, spending that's targeted and actually reaches people who need it with the food that they need. I can't help but mention the National School Food Program, which puts $1 billion over 5 years into programs and projects that will provide meals for up to 400,000 more kids per year. Unfortunately, the party opposite voted against that measure, but we think it's an important measure and something that is helping many people in our communities. More generally, increased consumer choice with increased competition in the grocery sector is a key, and I would say even the key to improving food affordability. And that's why in recent years we've, in this Parliament, modernized the Competition Act. And now a number of members from all parties have just come back from an industry committee meeting where we heard from Commissioner Matthew Boswell, from Competition Commissioner rather, Matthew Boswell. And when we asked him how the changes to the Act are helping him promote competition, he asked in return essentially, how much time do you have? He has a long list of measures that he is already implementing with the supports that have been given through the resources that have been given by the government to help the Bureau do its job, in part to help tame food prices. So for instance, changes to the Act have required vendors to be more truthful in their advertising, recognizing that showing prices without all mandatory fees is a form of dishonesty. This practice of drip pricing makes it harder for consumers to make price comparisons to find the best value. It penalizes those vendors who are most upfront with how much things cost. We know in this era of limited attention that those kinds of little things that are those little sleight of hand pieces can really help divert people from finding the best options. We've also made amendments that affect how the Competition Bureau can investigate anti-competitive conduct and deceptive marketing. A strong Competition Bureau and good competition policy, it helps consumers. It's as simple as that. But we have work to do with the players in our grocery sector as well. Our engagement with industry has been focused on ensuring that the continuous improvement of food affordability. After many years of collaboration with provincial and territorial ministers of agriculture and lots of industry engagement, lots of which we've talked about in this House in the previous Parliament, we were pleased in July 2024 that all of the large grocery retailers committed to the Grocery Sector Code of Conduct. The code is a positive step towards uniting supply chain partners to operate under a set of ground rules and bring more fairness, transparency, and predictability to Canada's grocery supply chain and for consumers. You know, we're working hand in hand with industry and partners to continue to ensure food price stability, including the measures that my colleague, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food mentioned. Will continue to take concrete actions to ensure Canadians pay fair prices for groceries. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. The point that I think is still being missed by the governing side of the aisle is that you can't spend your way out of a deficit problem, out of a deficit and a mounting debt problem, more and more money flowing off the table. The member does refer to the fact that we're giving more programs, so therefore it shouldn't be as bad at the end. The fact is, food continues to inflate. This is a basic of human needs. We've got to make sure that we get this under control more than anything else, because Canadians need to eat and need to eat well. The whole thing about what you eat is a contribution to your lifestyle, both the quality and how long you live. So this is something that they've got to get in front of here. It is a fundamental indication of how we're doing as a society. Get better food to Canadians, make sure they can afford that food, and make sure you deliver it without cost. Cutting the deficit is part of averting food inflation. Will you please get ahead of this inflation you're causing?
Order, obviously, through the chair. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I continue to share the concern of the member for Calgary Centre and appreciate some of his points. I'll just observe that, you know, in our province, in our country, we have some really great assets to be really proud of. A number of my colleagues in Ontario caucus, we went recently to the visit Canada's warehouse capital, so to speak, in southwestern Ontario in Windsor-Leamington area. And there you see fresh food being delivered and grown at scale in a way that can reach lots of Canadians. But we also realize that it's a broader set of policy issues. I'll refer, of course, to our income tax cut to reach 22 million Canadians that took effect on July 1st. And that's another one of those measures that we think can help relate to affordability, including food affordability.